In 1347, 12 merchant ships arrived in Sicily. Most of the sailors were already dead. The survivors were covered in strange black swellings. Within weeks, people across Europe began dying faster than they could be buried. Entire villages disappeared. Cities fell silent. By the time it ended, up to half of Europe's population was gone. This is the true story of the Black Death. The disease began far from Europe, likely in the arid plains and mountains of Central Asia, where it had quietly existed among wild rodent populations for centuries without ever reaching a major population center. Most historians believe the plague spread westward along the Silk Road, the vast network of trade routes connecting Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, which had grown busier and more interconnected than at any previous point in human history. Merchants unknowingly carried infected rats aboard their wagons and ships, while fleas carrying the deadly bacteria hidden in their fur searched for new hosts at every stop along the way. Trade had made civilizations richer and more connected than ever before, but that same network of roads and sea lanes had also built the perfect highway for one of history's deadliest pandemics. In October of 1347, 12 Genoese trading ships sailed into the harbor of Messina, Sicily, arriving from the Black Sea port of Caffa, where the disease had already torn through a besieging army. Curious townspeople rushed to the docks to greet them, only to discover a scene closer to nightmare than commerce. Many of the sailors aboard were already dead at their posts. Others staggered ashore, burning with fever, vomiting blood, their bodies marked with painful black swellings the size of eggs beneath their arms and around their necks. The horrified authorities of Messina ordered what came to be called the death ships back out to sea immediately. But it was already too late. The plague had made landfall in Europe. The disease spread with a speed that seemed almost impossible to comprehend. Victims often felt entirely healthy in the morning and lay dead within 3 or 4 days. Families watched helplessly as loved ones developed swollen, blackened lymph nodes called buboes, followed by raging fever, agonizing pain, and a rapid, merciless decline. Medieval doctors, working centuries before anyone understood bacteria or infection, were utterly powerless against it. Some physicians believed the disease traveled through poisoned air or miasma and wore long beaked masks stuffed with herbs to filter it. Others insisted it was divine punishment for humanity's sins and turned to prayer and public flagellation instead of medicine. Nothing they tried, bloodletting, herbal remedies, or penance, slowed the plague's advance even slightly. As the months dragged on, panic consumed Europe from the Mediterranean coastlines to the northern reaches of England and Scandinavia. Streets that had once bustled with merchants and craftsmen fell eerily silent. Church bells rang for funerals almost without pause, day and night, until the constant tolling itself became a source of dread. Gravediggers, exhausted and often sick themselves, no longer could keep pace with the mounting dead. Mass graves, long trenches dug just outside city walls, became a grim necessity as entire communities fought simply to survive one more day. Fear itself quickly became almost as deadly as the disease. Families, terrified of contagion, abandoned sick relatives to save themselves, sometimes leaving parents or children to die alone. Entire towns barred their gates against travelers and strangers, no matter how desperate. In some cities, authorities went so far as to seal the doors of homes where infection had been discovered, trapping the sick and often the healthy alongside them, inside to face the disease together. Trade collapsed as merchants refused to travel. Food grew scarce as farms lost their workers. And perhaps most painfully, the basic trust between neighbors that had held communities together for generations began to dissolve entirely. The plague eventually reached nearly every corner of Europe, from the port cities of Italy to the remote villages of Scandinavia and the British Isles. Between 1347 and 1351, just 4 catastrophic years, historians estimate that somewhere between 1/3 and half of Europe's entire population perished. Exact numbers remain impossible to know with certainty, since record-keeping itself often collapsed alongside everything else. But the scale of the catastrophe was unlike anything the continent had ever witnessed before or since. Entire villages vanished from maps entirely, their names surviving only in old tax records. Farms stood abandoned, fields left to grow wild. For the survivors left behind, death had become simply a part of everyday life, no longer shocking, only expected. And yet, from this almost unimaginable tragedy came profound and lasting change. With so much of the labor force gone, the workers who survived suddenly found themselves in a position no peasant in Europe had held for centuries: genuine bargaining power. Laborers could now demand higher wages, better food, and improved living conditions, and landowners, desperate for workers to bring in what harvests remained, often had little choice but to agree. The rigid social structures of feudal Europe, which had bound peasants to their lords for generations, began to weaken and crack. Historians now widely view the Black Death as one of the forces that helped set medieval Europe on the long road towards the Renaissance. The plague did not simply kill tens of millions of people. It fundamentally reshaped Europe's economy, its politics, and its society for generations that followed. It would take nearly 6 centuries for science to fully explain what medieval Europeans could never have understood. Today, researchers know the Black Death was primarily caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, most commonly spread through the bite of fleas that had fed on infected rats, though a more virulent airborne form of the disease could also pass directly between humans. Modern medicine, antibiotics unavailable to any doctor in the 13th century, has since reduced the plague from an unstoppable civilization-ending force to a rare, treatable illness in the few regions where it still occasionally appears. But the pandemic remains one of history's most important reminders of just how quickly an unseen threat can bring even the mightiest civilizations to their knees. The Black Death claimed the lives of tens of millions of people. It emptied cities, changed kingdoms, and permanently altered the course of European history. It remains one of the deadliest pandemics ever recorded, not only because of the sheer number of lives it took, but because of the entirely different world it left behind in its wake. Sometimes history is changed by kings. Sometimes it's changed by wars, and sometimes it's changed by something too small for the human eye to ever see.